Good afternoon, everyone, and the people who are standing at the door, may I request them to please come in and settle down? All right, a warm welcome to the Energy Access Investment Forum 2025, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deepak Mahapatra. I'm the Senior Officer, Business and Market Development at the Alliance for Rural Electrification. Today, I have the pleasure to welcome you to the thematic panel titled Powering Industries and Surrounding Communities for Green Energy Transition. On this auspicious session, we will be delving deep into the topic of powering industries and from the perspective that ARE looks into it and works on. Powering industries and surrounding communities with clean energy is critical for accelerating the green energy transition, driving sustainable economic growth in modern era, and achieving a sustainable standard of living. As industries seek to reduce their carbon footprint, the transition to more sustainable practices, ensuring reliable energy access for local communities, become equally important. This session will particularly delve into the pivotal role of distributed renewable energies, or DRE in short, solutions in meeting the growing energy demands of industrial operations, including the sector like manufacturing, telecommunication, while simultaneously providing local communities with clean, affordable, and reliable electricity. Experts will explore the successful models where industrial facilities and telecom towers are powered by renewable sources, enhancing both productivity and environmental sustainability. The discussion will cover key challenges such as the integration of renewable energy with existing industrial infrastructure, the role of energy storage systems, and the importance of policy frameworks that encourage private sector investment. Panelists will also share best practices for overcoming financial, technical, and logistical challenges or barriers. Through real-world case studies and insights from key stakeholders, this session will highlight how electrifying industries and telecom infrastructure with renewable energy can serve as a catalyst for broader energy access. It will also emphasize the role of industrial electrification in stimulating socio-economic development, improving resilience, supporting sustainable livelihoods in surrounding communities. Thank you so much. And with that, I would like to walk us through the table of contents for this session particularly. This session will also have or feature the MOU signing ceremony between ARE and another notable association, the GSM Association, GSMA in short, represented by my colleague, Mr. George. With that in mind, and with that having announced that, may I invite Mr. George and Mr. Gillian on stage to do the honors. Welcome. Welcome. All right, now that we have both the gentlemen on stage, I would like to invite you to kindly do the honors by opening the folder and finding the MOU draft over there. Ladies and gentlemen, Powering Industries campaign, it's an initiative started by an Alliance for Rural Electrification to cover the broader aspect of energy and its nexus between other demand-side sectors such as telecom, mining, textile, e-mobility, healthcare, education, and so on. The intersection at which energy being the prime mover, which is very much responsible for the functioning of other sectors, and how decentralized renewable energy can play a big role in achieving them. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have the pleasure to invite on stage Mr. Gillian first, representing Alliance for Rural Electrification in the capacity of board member, to speak a few words about the session.
All right. Good morning still? No, afternoon. Hi, everyone. You look very excited. I am. So I'm very proud on the name of ARE, so I'm a board member, to have signed this MOU. Now talking on my behalf as a CEO of a developer, I think it's a very good thing to sign this kind of MOU because between electricity and network, there is a very strong opportunity to work together. If we want our mini-grid to be stronger, to be faster to profitability or at least sustainability, having an anchor tenor like a telecommunication tower is great. What is making it quite difficult at the moment is collaboration and coordination. We are building our mini-grid based on our map, our pipeline, and it's very seldom when we receive the same kind of data from network operator in advance to select the site together. I'm very, very convinced that this kind of MOU will accelerate the opportunity to collaborate together and to bring both electricity and data communication access to the world in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Definitely a key word to remember, acceleration towards collaboration for better impact. Thank you so much for that term, Julian. May I invite Mr. George on stage to also share his sentiments about this MOU between ARE and GSMA. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Gillian. Thanks, Deepak. We're at the GSMA are really excited to sign this MOU and also to drive the collaboration with ARE. The twin transition of the climate transition and the digital transition require coordination between both sectors, especially in the African context where we still see large digital connectivity gaps as well as energy access gaps. And we really believe that stronger collaboration and coordination between the two sectors can improve the commercial viability of digital as well as energy use cases. And it was really exciting. Our GSMA team recently attended the World Bank Digital Summit, which took place in DC, and there was so much chatter about green digitalization and supporting collaboration between the sectors. And the mobile industry can also do a lot to accelerate the energy transition, and that's what we're going to talk about in the panel that's about to follow. Just to say maybe one word, we, the GSMA, have launched a new initiative where we're working with the 6 largest mobile operators in Africa to support their transition towards renewable energy resources. If you want to talk a bit about that, if you know solutions providers, either in the ESCO or mini-grid space for telecom towers, feel free to reach out to me and let's have a chat. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the signing for the owners. And I would like to then request you to kindly, Julian, to kindly step down. Julian didn't agree to be the panelist today. His words are too valuable for the stage. So, Julian, thank you so much. May I invite on stage all our dear panelists for this session. Mr. Gabriel Mayo, Head of Operations Equatorial Power. Mr. George Kibala Bauer, Senior Director, GSMA, who is already on stage. You saw him already. Ms. Doris Muthami, Business Development Manager, PIDG. Mr. Gregoire Durival, Sales Director, SAGEMCOM. Mr. John Kimotho, Investment Director, Mirova. Please take your seat. Thank you so much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, after this MOU signing ceremony, we will, as for the format of this event, this is going to be more discussion oriented, not very PowerPoint presentation to make you feel sleepy and dream about the lunch which is coming afterwards. So let's start with the discussions and keep them as engaging as possible so that we have a more insightful and an impactful discussion. So to start with, I would enter into the one-on-one interview stage, whereby I would like to pose the first question to Mr. Gabriel from Equatorial Power. Mr. Gabriel, Equatorial Power has been a leader in integrating distributed renewable energy solutions into industrial and community scale projects. From your experiences, what are the key success factors in ensuring that industrial electrification, especially in the sectors like agro-processing and telecom, also benefits surrounding communities in a sustainable and commercially viable way?
Thank you, Mr. Deepak. First, Equatorial Power focuses on the we are so committed in bringing the transformative agenda of bringing energy closer to underserved communities. So that is what we focus on. And the coming to the question, some of the success factors which has seen this working out is first around the anchor consumers, those big consumers who use electricity. When we develop these mini grids, these anchor users, these big consumers, the big loads, brings that surety that you'll be able to sell electricity. You can plan your revenues. And also, when you look at the unit economics, you have to plan, distribute your resources to one specific or 1, 2, 3, those key anchors. But it goes without saying that other than these key guys who consume more our electricities, the community around also, the number of connections that gets to these communities, the impact that goes into it becomes one of the success factors. In addition to that, the productive hubs. This is where the real impact is. This is because when you look at for example, when you connect household with electricity, more often it is when you compare the localized cost of generating a kilowatt versus what you get from that, it's something that is really an opportunity that we can work on. The third one is, and I think it is something which is, everyone must have interacted with this, is around the pay-go and lease-to-own models, especially when we look at now the productive use of energy. For our users to get these appliances or to, like we are looking at possibility of e-mobility both on land and on water. We know the capex requirement for this for the users is really way high. So when we get this kind of lease to own, like or perpetual lease, it makes it possible for them to get that. Then, yeah. So basically, those are the ideas that we've seen work in the space. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for also highlighting the fact that there's a there's a thin line of difference, or if I can put it like that, the idea or the fact that you're being connected but not receiving electricity, so having just merely connections is not enough while we are still living in the dark. And thanks for also outlining the three different business models that you see in your experience working. Moving on to Mr. George from GSMA. George, we would like to know, you being one of the industry experts or stalwarts, telecom towers are increasingly powered by distributed renewable energy solutions in rural and remote areas. As we also saw anchor load as an effective solution. So reducing operational costs and improving the service reliability as two of the major factors. From GSMA's perspective, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in scaling clean energy solutions for telecom infrastructure, particularly in rural and underserved areas? You can also use the standalone.
Thanks. Maybe just to engage the audience a bit, I know you guys are close to lunch. Just maybe two questions to you. How many towers, what is the percentage of towers in bad or off-grid areas in Africa that you think are powered by diesel? What do you think the percentage is? If anybody has an idea, just shout it out. Yeah? 70? Okay. Who has another one? 80%, good. Yeah? And 60? Okay, so...
Is the moderator allowed?
Huh?
Is the moderator allowed?
You can also, yeah.
How about 73?
73? All good guesses. The 80% guess was closest to it. So, I mean, our GSMA study found that 88% of towers in bad or off-grid areas across Africa are powered by diesel. And now just one follow-on question. what do you think the operational expenditure is that operators spend on buying and transporting diesel in Nigeria as part of their total operational expenditure as a company, in Nigeria specifically? Oh, take a wild guess. Yeah? Greater than 60%, yeah? 70%, yeah. Yeah, so the estimates are around 60 to 70%, so that's great guesses. And I think that's just a good starting point for my answer, because diesel consumption is a huge challenge for the industry. Obviously, one of the downsides is carbon emissions and the climate impact, but given the point I made about operational expenditure, it also means that operators are spending a significant amount of their OpEx in many countries just on buying diesel and transporting it to remote tower sites. And powering remote tower sites with diesel comes with several disadvantages. There's the cost factor that I mentioned. There's also the issue of theft. About 30% of the diesel at the tower site usually gets lost or stolen in some kind of way. Another downside is also associated with the fact that filters need to be regularly changed, and the diesel genset itself is not necessarily made to power towers, so itself also needs to be replaced quite regularly. So from an operational perspective, there are several disadvantages. Now, we as a mobile industry have committed to reducing our emissions, with about 70% of operators committing to science-based climate targets. So there's the need to reduce emissions, there's the need to reduce costs, but very importantly, also, if we are to meet our digital inclusion objectives as an industry, so reducing the coverage gap as well as the usage gap, solving the energy challenge of the industry is actually critical. We did this study in GSMA where we looked at the impact of energy costs on data costs. So you can imagine if you as an operator spend around 50% of your OpEx on energy, you pass that on to consumers in the form of higher data costs, which depresses digital usage. And also what we see is that operators are not necessarily extending or upgrading networks because of the high energy costs that they face. Now, I've described some of the challenges. Where do we see opportunities? So we see a lot of synergies between energy access and digital connectivity, because when you think about rural economic development and rural connectivity, the ROI for you as a mobile operator on a rural site increases if there's reliable electricity. Customers can charge their phones, they might use mobile money more frequently, they might use data more frequently, so the average revenue per customer in a site that has electricity goes up. But the reverse is also true. If you're an energy developer, you want connectivity to be there because that will raise energy demand and make your mini-grid more viable. Now, when it comes to the solutions, I mean, from a cost perspective, over the long run, renewable energy solutions are already far more cost competitive than diesel. Some of the challenges are with the upfront costs. It's also the uptime requirements that we have as an industry. We need 99.9% uptimes because networks can't go down, and we need renewable energy providers that can meet that demand. And then obviously another kind of challenge is the multiple different stakeholders one needs to engage in these projects, because in a lot of African countries, mobile operators no longer own tower infrastructure, so they are tower cos. Another stakeholder one has to engage. In some instances, the tower cos outsource the energy provision to ESCOs as well. So there are a lot of different stakeholder dynamics that need to be taken into account, and a lot of lengthy negotiations can hold up implementation. But what we need more is more cross-sectoral coordination, more initiatives like this, where us as a GSMA and ARE are collaborating, bringing the two sectors together, getting them to understand each other, getting them to understand their commercial incentives, the timelines that they work with, and so on. And I think then we will see much more uptake, and we already see in some markets like Nigeria, for instance, as well as the DRC, which is a challenging operating environment, but where we've seen several renewable energy models work quite well. And we are quite excited about the anchor model that you mentioned, where the telecom tower is an anchor client for a mini-grid that also provides power to the surrounding settlements. That sometimes can be challenging just based out of geography as well, though, because if the tower is located on a hill next to a village, how do you size the mini-grid in a way that it makes sense? But there's also ESCO solutions, which we're quite excited about, where renewable energy providers are just focused on providing power to the tower side. And with the growing CNI, CNI solar industry across the African continent, where a lot of providers are also providing power to breweries, manufacturing businesses, and others, there's a lot of capacity and investment going in that space that I think will benefit the mobile industry as well.
Thank you. George, you mentioned about multi-stakeholders or having multiple stakeholders as a challenge. I do see it as an opportunity rather. Do you have a couple of words to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go further together, certainly, and there are many different ways in which multi-stakeholder collaboration can enable impact at scale, but
exactly.
It also implies greater complexity, lengthier negotiations, and I think, for instance, if you're negotiating as a mini-grid company with a mobile operator and a tower co about a site, the incentives of the mobile operator for the electrification of the tower site might be different than that of the tower co, right? So you have to take that into account. As mobile operators, we're naturally interested to see our customer base have access to electricity because they become more valuable customers. From a tower co perspective, those incentives are not always that clear. So there's that dimension. But I would say also where I see the opportunity when it comes to multiple stakeholders is for governments and donors to break down silos between energy access and digital connectivity. So it's really exciting that the World Bank recently launched, the Green Digital Business Line, and under the digital vice presidency that the World Bank has recently inaugurated, there's much more coordination between the two sectors. And also on the policy front, we see that ministries of energy and ministries of ICT are coordinating more because they understand that in order to meet each other's goals, they need to collaborate, and they can also team up together to convince the Minister of Finance to make certain interventions. For instance, reducing VAT on solar equipment is not just important from an energy perspective, but maybe also from an ICT sector perspective.
Yeah. Thank you. You did mention about the convincing the financiers, and even that can bring the problems associated with multi-stakeholder cooperation, let's say, to a more conditioning stage where things can work. Speaking of which, beyond powering telecom infrastructure, how can the mobile industry play a more active role in expanding energy access for surrounding communities, given the whole topic? It's okay, guys, no problem. It's just some light. We still have the sun shining outside. So where was I?
How can the mobile industry?
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of from community perspective, how can mobile industry still play an impactful role there? And are there innovative business models or partnerships that you see driving the convergence of mobile connectivity and DRE solutions? Basically, the question is indicating towards the foundation of our cooperation that we started on the signed MOU today.
Absolutely. I think the mobile industry has been an important partner and enabler of the DRE space for quite some time. I mean, one cannot think about pay-as-you-go solutions without mobile connectivity. They rely on mobile payments and end-to-end connectivity as well. Certainly, mobile money providers have been collaborating with the off-grid solar sector for quite some time. I would admit that some of the mobile money integrations could be facilitated a bit more rapidly, and we as a GSMA have advocated for the industry to be a better partner to the sector by, for instance, highlighting in our study on the value of pay-as-you-go solar for mobile operators. It is actually in mobile operators' interest to be good partners to the industry, because pay-as-you-go solar customers also become more valuable clients to mobile operators. Beyond that, I think interesting. Beyond that, another interesting dimension is on energy planning. So we have recently collaborated with the World Bank to share telecom tower location data for integrated energy planning activities. So this is really crucial for obviously developers to understand where are sites when you're thinking about expanding. So for instance, in the Nigeria DARES program, it'll be great for the World Bank to advertise as part of their geospatial data platform, you know, where are the tower sites. That's good for the developers, but it's also if you want to roll out a pay-as-you-go sort of use case on top of your mini grid, you actually need to know, is the connectivity good enough in that site for me to do that? So all of that is quite useful as well, and I think that's something we're quite excited about and want to roll out in other markets as well. So I think those two, I would say, are particular ones. I think maybe just as a third element, we have seen some mobile operators like Orange or Axian also develop their own energy businesses. So they are Axian Group, for instance, owns WeLight, which is I think an ARE member as well. So there's also been a lot of interest by some mobile operators to kind of look at energy as a market opportunity for themselves as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, speaking of ARE member, I would like to jump to one. SAGEMCOM, represented by Mr. Gregoire here. Gregoire, as a leading EPC with large experience in both world energy and both world of energies and telecom, okay. Would you like to share your views regarding the synergies between the electrification of communities and the development of connectivity?
So indeed, SAGEMCOM is an EPC company specialized in both sectors. We build infrastructure in telecommunications and rural electrification and energy in general. Rural electrification lights a bulb. Connectivity opens the door to the world, and both together combine, empower education, business, agriculture, and health. As George mentioned, today the priorities of the telcos, telecommunication operators, are mainly to reduce their OPEX, to green their network. Their license as well impose them to reach rural areas, which are less bankable for sure. So they have to develop connectivity as well in these remote areas, where most of their customers don't have much electricity just to use their network. So it's crucial for sure for the telcos to get synergies with the energy field. At the same time, the IPPs will have an anchor customer using the towers as the main customer, driving some recurrent businesses. And the telco and the telecommunication will develop the activity and the economy within the villages that they are electrifying, generating more revenue and more development of the electricity use. So we saw in our programs where we built mini-grids across Africa, we saw that once a village is electrified, the data demand grows and vice versa. So for sure, there are some significant synergies. There is more and more needs for energy in the telco field. There's more and more telco needs within the energy field as well. So it's obvious that there are lots of synergies, and our vision is quite clear. We need some convergence. We need some coordination since day one to make it happen. So convergence between telecommunications and rural electrification is obvious, and probably the next one shall be water.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed, definitely. Convergence and cooperation between different, like, to put it wisely, let's say cross-sectoral cooperation, and forecasting that water will be part of it is definitely impactful. And also, in many cases, we do have like food, water, and energy nexus as a topic to deal with. Second question that I have for you is, what roles does smart grid technology play in enhancing the resilience of industrial and community energy grids? What approaches are required to decarbonize them or retrofit with clean energy sources? And also, to add to that, what financial models shall be explored here, please?
So three topics here: innovation, growing, having an impact on the economy, and financing. So first of all, in terms of innovation, first thing first, it has to be reliable, it has to be low cost. So for sure, we will not try to make amazing innovation far from everything. We do innovation, especially on the main difficulties that the predictions, the demand predictability is not as easy as we wish and as we believe it was. So for sure, there are some solutions with software solutions made on artificial intelligence that facilitate the predictability analytics that will support underload demand and facilitate the maintenance, whether it's for off-grid or grid extension solutions. So that's the main innovation we see, which is ongoing. Not necessarily with smart meters, but smart metering plus the softwares allowing all this improvement of the network. Other innovations for the CNI, for instance, we believe that the main innovation in CNI will be to produce electricity and get integrated with the CNI applications, such as for agriculture. We strongly believe in the agrivoltaism, which is a combination of producing electricity and contributing to the agriculture, producing solar system, doing irrigation and collecting waters. Now, rural electrification is not just about lighting a bulb, actually. What the country needs, from our discussion we have with different governments and rural agencies, they want to create jobs. They want to create some local products rather than exporting raw materials. They want to transform their economy. They want to develop their economy. So electricity is not the end. Electricity is just the beginning of it, and it's a main purpose to make it happen with local processing, with cashew nut processing. Here in Uganda, copper transformation, rather than exporting copper, they can export cables. The coffee roasting here, Uganda is well known as well for the coffee. So there's lots of value to create within the country rather than just limiting the rural electrification. So we do believe that the productive use is the key. However, most of the programs are not organized in such a way. We are focusing on electrifying without thinking about what's behind the electricity. But the key for the governments and the countries is value creation and sovereignty. The last point is about financing and financing innovation. From our point of view, money is not missing. Money is not the bottleneck.
Money is not bottleneck, then what is?
We see that what is slowing down the process is mainly very rigid programs, very rigid procurement processes that are taking years and years to apply. Second difficulty as well is a very heavy and uncoordinated administrative processes. And last but not least, a lack of true experience and true quality in implementation on the field. Mm-hmm. So we believe that money is here, but money alone doesn't make the projects. It has to make it happen. We are asking for more flexibility in the process, maybe more agility in making it happen, and let's walk the walk.
Thank you. Flexibility and agility when it comes to financing projects. Let's see what our financial panelists think about this topic, if they challenge or support your ideas. So we have Ms. Doris Muthami from PIDG and Mr. John Kimothos, pardon my pronunciation, from Mirova. I have a question, I have one question that both of you can take. So PIDG, Infraco, as well as Mirova, both have played key roles in de-risking in infrastructure investments for clean energy projects. What are the most effective mechanisms for mobilizing capital to scale up industrial electrification, community engagement, or energy access projects, particularly in high-risk markets? Do you think money is a bottleneck, or it is actually not?
Happy to go first. Hi everyone. My name is John Kimotho, as you said, and I'm an investment director with Mirova. Mirova in the region used to be known as Sanfanda. We've been in the DRE space for the last 13 or so years. So we've seen the sector grow, and we've been actively involved in form of financing. I like the conversation. He checked with me, by the way, before he made some statements, whether we think in the space financing is a problem. I don't believe that's a problem. I think there are other issues because we are here. You know, you see a lot of investors and funders that are actively looking to participate in the DRE space and in the energy transition space. But I think an important statement is, you know, Africa faces a twin problem of electrifying the communities. We've had this large statistic that has remained constant for a long period of time. 600 billion people unelectrified. At the same time, we need to electrify or to power industries, right? So that's a twin challenge where there are communities to electrify and industries to power. Combining the two is, of course, something that we need to innovatively think about. Financially, or in terms of financial solutions that have been important in that space, that have been able to, or have been utilized to bridge that gap is, I think some of them have been alluded to. Blended finance structures are important. We, for example, at Mirova, have a debt fund that mixes impact investors and commercial money. So impact investors within the fund structures are able to take lower cost of capital or take up fast loss, and therefore catalyzing the commercial investors to be able to participate in that space. So they are, that kind of solution is already in the market. We have RBF and grant financing. We've seen very successful models in the space. So RBF being results-based, so you have to first achieve connections for you to get the funding. What this financing people like us will help is to bridge the access to the grant financing or the RBF. So we do provide what we call construction financing as a bridge to access to RBF. We see risk mitigants and guarantee facilities. So PRI, for example, or partial guarantees, as well as currency solutions for local currency, so we focus on local currency. So that's another solution that can be used to bridge the gaps in the sector. Players in the space have partnered with, for example, hedging providers that are participating in the space to be able to offer solutions in local currencies. We also have a World Bank, for example, the MEGA solutions that enable investors to be able to participate in financing difficult jurisdictions that are exposed to political risks and civil unrest, which unfortunately has increased in the last couple of years. And I think, lastly, I think in terms of financing solutions, we also have something that they have all talked about, the ABC model, which is the anchor business and consumer models. Somehow it's, it's been tested in the African continent. I don't think it's really picked up. It's still nascent, but we've seen models working in other jurisdictions. For example, in India, the telco space and the combining that with rural electrification has been very successful. In Africa, we are seeing a bit of that in Nigeria and in other markets. I think that's a very innovative solution. There is an ability to grow that model further. The challenge we experience is that we don't have a lot of anchor clients or anchor business clients that are aligning enough to be able to provide solutions that are suitable for them, but also for the communities. So I think there are enough financial solutions in the space, and we've been actively participating to contribute.
Thank you. Very important point you mentioned, to also work and enhance on having both more ABC models so that we can capture broader audience in the spectrum of energy access, mobile connectivity, and that comes with the Powering Industries initiative. I guess audience can also take note of that and keep your questions ready, because later on we will enter into the interactions with the audience. Let's also hear it from Doris on the same question, please. Just press it underneath. There's a button. Just single press. Yeah, there you go.
Clearly, technology is not my
It's
But-
only there to develop further, making our lives difficult.
Okay, so but just to add on to that and maybe briefly introduce PIDG, which is the Private Infrastructure Development Group. So we are funded mainly by the government of UK through FCDO, plus other consortium of governments. And within us, we have various solutions. So we have the equity for early stage project development. We have guarantees, debt, and technical assistance facility. So a good one-stop shop for project development life cycle. And just to respond to the question asked, in terms of availability of funding, I think funding is available. It's just unlocking that funding that is difficult. Of course, where our funding is coming from, there is expectation that that funding should at least return and be able to be recycled and deployed elsewhere. So that presents the challenges of the risks that we are able to take as financiers and the ones that we are not able to take. So colleague Kimotho has addressed a lot of the ways that we can unlock that financing. By basically boils down to two things, de-risking the projects or creating innovative financing ways to finance. So in terms of de-risking, I think policy plays a big role into that.
Surely, yeah.
So strengthening policy and framework or using the PPP models allows the private sector and the public sector to collaborate and allocate risk appropriately, which allows us to then finance the project. The other one, I think, is also aggregation and just a platform approach, which is also coming along to try and diversify that risk so that you're not really concentrating it in one asset class or within one geography, then allows us to deploy capital in that sense. So when developers are presenting a project, they need to think about it from that angle as well. Just any ways of trying to minimize risk from the project perspective. In terms of flexibility, I think given our funding is mostly from public sector in Europe and so on, it has its limitations, as I said earlier. So that is some of the things that hold us back in terms of the things that we need to check to be able to deploy this capital. But I agree there could be more efficiency between the different financiers to allow the capital to be deployed in faster timelines that support project development as opposed to the long lead times that it's been taking right now. So thanks.
Thank you. I mean, both John and you mentioned about the credibility of, let's say, blended financing, and I would like to really ask you about some successful cases of blended finance approaches or public-private partnerships that have successfully enabled industrial and community-scale projects in Africa, in your experience, please.
Maybe I can start this
Yeah,
time. From our end, as I said, PIDG offers a blended approach to financing. So just referencing from some of the projects we've done for, say, mini-grids using this anchor approach, we have funded projects that have done the PPP model. So basically, there was a tender by the government with allocating a certain slots, and then we come in as financiers. The government provides a quick process to getting the permits done and also the land for the project and also the distribution grid. Right. So that has worked very well, and the project was able to be deployed quite quickly. It also gave a concession of 20 years, which reduces that risk that sort of comes with DRE kind of financing because that's been anchored. The other model was to deploy solar home systems where we followed the approach of RBF, and then we came in with the equity, and then we had our sister company Garantco provide a partial credit guarantee, which was allowed the project to unlock local debt, which then takes care of the issue of currency risk. And for the other mini grids, including with Gabriel here that we've done, it's mostly been an approach of combining RBF plus equity financing, because the reality is there's a limitation on tariff that can be charged to the end users to keep it affordable. versus the costs of the project. So we need to find ways to subsidize that so that it's still bankable from our end. Externally in the market, we have had good cases with the NEP project by the World Bank, the Nigeria Electrification Program, where it was also following a mixture of PPP model and the regulatory reforms followed to support that program and create a one-stop shop from REA in terms of permitting. And I think it's had a very good success in that. And the good part of that, it was also going beyond just household electrification. It was thinking about the productive use part of things and solar home system, the whole ecosystem, basically trying to unlock that. And the other one I can think closer to home was COSAP program in Kenya. It also followed a PPP model where it was tendered, the slots were tendered, the private sector developers were awarded lots to build the mini grids and concession period. And it was also providing RBF to subsidize the tariffs for the developers. And yeah, I think I'll leave at that. There are many, many more cases that have followed a similar blended finance approach that have worked successfully. But it all boils down to, I think, implementation. So all the partners working together to facilitate from the government and the private sector, and the RBF also being a bit flexible in terms of how they are disbursing that capital, because sometimes they tend to be a bit rigid and fail to serve purpose. Hand over to you.
Perhaps before coming to John, a very quick question on behalf of the audience. What is, let's say, on average, the time it requires from the time of application to decision?
What is the average?
Average timeline we are talking about.
Yeah, so in an ideal world, for us, that is 6 months.
And those in real world?
In the and let me just finish. That's our projects that have received, have progressed to a large extent with the agreements, and it's a very small part remaining to finish development work. In the real world, I'll say the truth because Gabriel might shoot me. It takes sometimes over a year plus or a year and a half just to close out CPs, and sometimes we can't finance everything. So they need to also go get a co-developer to come alongside us, which also takes time. So yeah, but we are trying to work on some of those efficiencies and risks. Thanks.
John, your 2 cents, please.
Yeah, we've managed blended finance for the years that we've been operating in this space. Some few examples of projects that we've been able to implement include an investment we made in Central Africa Republic, which is a high risk, normally high risk because of the civil unrest. For a couple of years, we were able to implement a project there and to lend into a telco operator. And the reason for that is because within our funds, we have guarantees. So we have a guarantee, a PRI, but also a credit, catalytic capital that has enabled us to take us some of that risks. So PRI, as I said, is one of the, or risk mitigants are one of the solutions for this sector. Currently, we are developing models or partnering with developers that are launching what we call telco NAS models for the rural communities. So these are different from ESCO. So ESCOs are, of course, providing energy to towers, MNO towers, which help them in their cost optimization, but also decarbonization strategies. But we're also partnering with the MNOs themselves to finance developers that are developing solutions which in the rural populations, which combine active elements, but also, the energy elements. And so that's what we call the network as a service kind of solutions. We are looking at a solution that is in that's implementing in Zambia as well as in other West African countries. And lastly, we are able to provide, I would say, working capital facilities for the C&I space, which is not very typical for traditional financing. So for example, in South Africa, we've concluded a facility for the front-end element of a C&I developer that has local capital for the long-term financing. So that kind of solution is not very well suited for traditional investors, but because of the blended finance nature of our funds, we've been able to provide solution.
Right.
I must say, though, that one enabler that's going to play an important role in this C&I plus energy access phase combination is regulation advancement. We've seen a lot of policy advancements in the region. You know, C&I has boomed at the back of governments in the region, realizing that it is really difficult to be able to provide cost-efficient, cost-effective solutions for electricity, and they are deregulating and allowing players to come into play. Today, a market like Kenya, East Africa specifically, for example, is launching the East African Power Pool. Yeah. East African Power Pool, which I understand is going to be launched sometime this year. Kenya is looking at wheeling regulations, it's looking at net metering. All these regulations will enable growth in these two sectors, because for you to be able to power community, for example, if you think of wheeling in Kenya, right? So wheeling will enable us, or will enable developers to be able to produce power in remote rural areas and transport it through the national grid's transmission and distribution infrastructure. But as they do that and they supply to the anchor clients in in faraway locations in urban centers, they are able also to be able to electrify the grid, right? So I think that shift in the regulations will still enable this model. I think, power pools for the region even contributes further to that, because I can be able to produce power in Kampala and supply it to Rwanda, to Tanzania, to Kenya, within the East African community, for example. Correct. So I think regulation and deregulation is going to play a very important role. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, dear audience, being mindful of the time, let's take around 8 to 10 minutes to also let the panelists answer your questions. So who would like to break the ice, please? The gentleman over here.
Yeah. Hello. So this question, my name is Nitin. To George. So when we talk about telecom as an anchor load, there is a diesel mafias, right? Where we get diesel smuggled and then the cost goes down. It's almost like 40 cents a dollar, right, for 1 unit. So how to bring them into the game rather than having a version of them? We are not going to solve that problem of mafia, right? So are there any practices, right, where you use battery as an energy service, where then the cost becomes manageable because capex is less? Are there some promising examples on that front? So that, yeah.
Dear panelists, please be brief with your answers.
Thanks. Yeah, no, first of all, really good question in terms of also raising sort of the diesel mafia point, because I think one thing we forget in terms of like change management and political economy and interest is that actually there are a lot of interests that keep diesel in place, right? In Nigeria, for instance, it's impossible to think about replacing diesel without understanding the different elite interests that are linked to diesel, and this is why the country has gone through a really interesting journey when it comes to, for instance, fuel subsidy removal. In terms of the capex point, I think there are some interesting like battery models, like for instance in Rwanda there's a startup called SLS Energy that creates backup battery solutions for telecom towers out of recycled batteries, so that's a really interesting model. But I mean, at scale we still think that operators should be able to make the required like upfront capex investments in order to move towards renewables. I agree with the financiers on the panel that financing is not a problem, but sometimes the cost of capital for different renewable energy projects in different African countries is obviously significantly higher than elsewhere, and that's a major challenge that we need to solve, but we also need to create the right financing, blended financing structures that can support different players to make those upfront investments as well. What we see right now is that there's a bit of a gap in the mobile industry as well, with operators that are better capitalized being able to more quickly transition to renewable energy, especially the multinationals, versus, let's say, operators that are only active in 1 or 2 markets?
Thank you, George. Any further questions? Gentleman over there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Geoffrey. I run a company in Uganda called Kara. We make electric bicycles. And I'm really intrigued with your mention on anchor loads and using different industries as anchor loads. We've done some work with some mini-grid developers like Inensas in Uganda to try out e-mobility as an anchor load. But we've not actually gone into like the community side of using this in more productive use applications. But we've done a bit of work and we've seen some significant uptake in dairy, in mini-grid operations, maybe from Equatorial Power. What use cases have you tried out e-mobility? What use cases do you see in a lot of these communities that you deploy mini-grids into? And maybe from the rest of the panel, are there any thoughts on how to also sustainably finance acquisition of e-mobility assets in a lot of these communities? Because in many cases, the users are not just buying the electricity, they're also buying the product. And that requires, I think, a two-pronged approach, in my opinion. Thank you.
Good question. How we've been able to approach most of our productive use of energy is leveraging on, I would say, human-based design, where we really understand the needs of the population of where our sites are and plug into their normal day-to-day activities, what is missing, where can we fit into their value chain in adding more value in the, for example, looking at agro-processing and looking at post-harvesting losses. But coming back to the question around e-mobility, in most of the sites that we have presence in, we are interacting more with the fishermen and people, because most of our sites are in islands. So what we are currently doing, we tried in the past, but of course the development around that space, the provision, the providers of the technology was still young. So we tested some e-mobility on water, because as Equatorial Power, as a mini-grid developer, we don't want to be an expert on everything. So what we did is to see what was available, but it didn't serve the purpose at that point in time. But this is a place that we are coming back to, and we've learned that for us to succeed in this space, we need to work with experts like you, because mobility is a need regardless of the location. So it will be interesting, and the strategy that we've taken now is to work with experts, people who have done some work, they've done their homework, then we plug in, we become the power supplier, then you become the solution supplier, we partner and serve the community.
Okay, gentleman over here. Here.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Rolex Mucheka. I coordinate a project development program. We develop projects, C&I sector for renewable energy and energy efficiency. So my question really is on financing. We mentioned one of the challenges. For us, what we see is also access to finance, but you clearly mentioned that the problem is not funding or financing. How can we unlock financing for project developers in that space? Because also in the topic here, we are talking of powering industry. So for project developers in that space, how can we unlock financing, and what options do you have for them? Yeah, thank you.
Which panelist are you asking this question to?
So the lady in the middle, and then, yeah, so thank you.
Thanks for the question. My name is John, and happy to chat with you even after. But well, it's an interesting question because it's a conundrum we see in the industry. I think the capital for C&I, for example, and energy efficiency in sub-Saharan Africa is quite a lot. The pockets are large, and for sure there's always a question on why there's all that amount of capital, while we also have a lot of developers, but then that money is not moving, right? So I think it's there's a name that we all use, that's bankability. And somebody say that they avoid to use bankability because it's, you know, sometimes it's challenging and it's not understood. But really, capital is there, and you just need to, I think developers need to develop projects that are bankable for financiers. I think the most important things for financiers is to make sure that they get their returns back or their capital back, right? Unless you are a concessionary or grant provider, right? So here we are talking about onboarding the right quality of end users. So if you are doing C&I, you need to look at the credit quality of the person that you are providing the solar solutions to. And the ability to be able to pay you in 20 years, right? You need to make sure that the technology that they are offering is also sustainable for a long period of time. And you also need to, I think, enhance the corporate finance departments. Something that we found very interesting in the solar space, or DRE solar space, is that we have a lot of technical, capable people, but then we don't have corporate finance teams that are strong, that prepare their companies for capital. So we are focusing on solution, but you're not focusing on sourcing of capital. So as you grow the technology, you also need to grow your ability to be able to raise capital. And a lot of good engineers do have very nice solutions for the solutions. I mean, for the problems you are trying to solve for, but then forget a bit on putting their house in order, right? Their finances, their strategies, their policies, and all that. So those are some of the snippets, some of the points and ideas that we always have conversation around with developers, but happy to discuss more.
Yeah, I think it's covered most of it. So it's a game of investing in people, first of all. So if your team is looking competent, it looks like it knows the market, the local market, understands your products, who you're trying to tailor it with, can it compete with the available solutions, then money will follow that. So as you said, bankability, show us you have a clear strategy to market, how do you make money at the end of it, and who are these people that I'm putting money behind. If it's you as an entrepreneur, I need to see you've done this before. So you're not just trying and erroring a few things all over the place. This is your bread and butter. The other thing is work with the advisors. There's so many advisors right now that are willing to provide acceleration support in terms of what you were saying, packaging the company in a way that investors are able to come into the business. So this, from Get Fit, the matchmaking facilities, be part of that. They know who provides what kind of capital, at what stage, and are able to support you in that. There's many grant opportunities to be able to test out some of these things if it's new in the market, so explore some of those solutions. Yes, so it's a mix of a lot of things, but happy to discuss at the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Last one or two? I take count of that. Also being mindful of the gender constraints, not only on stage, but also off stage. Lady over there, please. Can we have the mic?
Hi, I'm Steph from Anzana Electric Group. Thank you for your time today. Had a question on how you as financiers look at the cost of capital with regards to impact. Are you able to take a position where, say, you've taken all the measures you can to de-risk and reduce the cost of capital to the point possible, But is there an impact perspective? So are you able to take a haircut on the margin on the debt that you're providing if the project is able to provide greater impact than, say, another project that would be a similar cost of capital?
And who is this question to?
Probably Doris and John, but I'd let the rest of the panel speak to it as well.
Thank you. Doris, John, and some brief answers, please.
Since I'm holding the mic, I'll go. Yes, for us, our pot of funding allows us to be able to balance the impact perspective with the return that we have. And that's how you keep hearing the word blended approach to things. So when we see there's a bigger need for maybe grants to make the returns, because there's also minimum returns you'd expect from a certain risk. So we are able to crowd in our sister company, the technical assistance facility, to be able to provide that grant, to be able to meet the returns that we need. But short answer is yes, we do provide that flexibility. It's a matter of balancing the portfolio as well. So there's a certain threshold that we can do, impact-oriented, but then we also need to balance with what we are doing that is commercial. So it depends in which sector you're in or which country you're in. We try to balance all that, so it's not usually a very straight cut. Thanks.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, nothing much to add really. I think blended finance is really the solution here, and there are different categories, right? So there are people who have pure concessionary capital, like RBFs and grants providers. So those ones will probably track impact, and that's really what their mandates are for. Then there are blended finance structures that are structured in terms of funds, like you know what we manage. There we have pockets that are concessionary in nature, but then the bigger trend today is finding in commercially oriented investors or funds or capital that is investing sustainably. So for example, how we position ourselves as Mirova is that we are a sustainable investment asset managers that combine search for return with impacts, right? So we are always making sure that the investment we make, they are commercial, but then they're also impactful. In terms of subsidizing beyond the real cost of capital, that's where your grant financing, catalytic financing, maybe PRGs and PRIs come into play, in addition to just getting these pockets of capital that is commercial enough. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, please. 2 sentences.
Yeah. Although I'm not a financier, I wanted to chime in on this just because, from my perspective, there's also a huge opportunity for different funders to leverage the same kind of metrics in order to co-deploy different forms of capital. So now a lot of different businesses in the DRE space are really data-driven. They have IoT systems. So you can use the same reporting data that you use for RBF to also do receivables financing, to also do even climate financing potentially. And I think there can be a lot of opportunity unlocked by better data-driven collaboration between funders and not mandating companies to separately report things that are essentially the same metrics, maybe just communicated in different ways.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I have gotten indications that we need to go for lunch, but I wanted to also briefly give the chance to the audience if you have any EPC-related question to SAGEMCOM. Yeah, the speaker wants to go for lunch as well. Okay, all right. So thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. We have had a pleasure of having this session on powering industries and the community engagement, where we talked about various models for financing, various model for project development, various model for what are the things that work and what are the things that don't. And I would like to thank, it's okay. And I would request the askers to please meet the panelists in the lunch area so that you can have longer and extended discussion. So while we are at it, I would like to make a couple of announcements. The lunch will be served at the lakeside where the cocktails, the reception was held yesterday. So those who know